Give us one moment. There we are. For those of you that see Stephen Williams' name, he is our IT person for today. Thank you, Stephen Williams, for providing us with this webinar.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. As Chris mentioned, my name is Faye Barno, and I'm with the Federal Trade Commission. First off, I want to thank Chris and Nevada Consumer Affairs for organizing this event and for providing valuable consumer protection content on a variety of topics. And thank you for inviting me to present to you today. I'll be talking with you about the financial impact of the coronavirus and what you can do if your finances have been affected by the pandemic. Next slide, please. And before I begin, I just need to make this mandatory disclosure. The views presented are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Commission or any commissioner. Next slide, please. I'll be talking about some ideas for how to handle issues like job loss and trouble paying bills, including mortgages and car payments, and also your rights in debt collection. And I'll talk about some of the scams that may come along with these situations. Next slide. So let's start off talking about job loss. If you lost your job, the first thing you should do is contact your state unemployment insurance office. They are the best resource for information about applying for unemployment insurance benefits in your state. The other thing you should do is to contact your creditors. They may be willing to work with you to set up a more manageable payment plan. Know that they're, yes.
If I may add, you mentioned the state unemployment insurance office, and as we understand in our state and here in Nevada, it's been really difficult to reach the unemployment office, but they are doing their best to answer those calls and questions. Okay, thank you.
And that brings up an interesting question. I'm curious to know, for the listeners on this call or this presentation, how many of you are from Nevada and how many of you are from another state? Is this something that they can put into the question and answer box?
Yes, they do have that ability to do that. Yes, Faye.
So if you're interested in giving us a sense of where you're coming from, that would be very helpful to know. Okay, terrific. We see 3 answers, all from Nevada. Okay, so.
Okay, so you see the responses that we're getting. There's Nevada, most of them are from Nevada.
There's one from California as well.
You see California as well?
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, thank you for your responses. So the other tip we have is to contact your creditors. They may be willing to work with you to set up a more manageable payment plan. And know that they're more likely to be reasonable if you talk to them early on rather than waiting until after you miss a payment. Next slide, please. So while you're looking for work, you might be tempted by ads that offer a work-at-home job. These jobs might include stuffing envelopes or inspecting merchandise and repackaging it, or the job might be for processing rebates or doing medical billing from home. But many of these quote-unquote jobs can actually be scams. To avoid getting tricked by a work-at-home scam, here are a couple things to keep in mind. 1, don't pay to get a job. Nobody legitimate will charge you up front to get a job.
Right.
And the second tip is watch out for fake job ads. To find legitimate jobs listings, try visiting sites like your state's Career One Stop. 3, don't believe ads that are offering what they say are federal government jobs that are somehow secret or not available to the general public. Legitimate information about federal jobs is free, and you'll find it at the federal government's website, usajobs.gov.
Are there
And finally,
are there any trending fake job ads that are currently going on that we can have an example of?
You know, yeah, we've seen some that are becoming more popular now. One of them is, we call them reshipping scams, where what is offered is that you'll be asked to be an inspector of merchandise. So they'll send merchandise to your home, and you're supposed to look at the packaging and make sure it is what it's supposed to be. And then you put it in a box and send it on to another location. And then you're supposed to get paid for that. And, you know, the way they'll describe it, it'll sound plausible. And, but, you know, in reality, it could be that you're just receiving stolen goods or merchandise that was purchased using somebody's stolen identity, and then you're basically being asked to be a fence and sending it to somebody else who's buying it, not knowing that it's stolen goods. So, and then you find out that you don't get even paid for doing the work. So that's something that we've seen recently as a big problem. But we've seen these kind of job scams in all varieties, all flavors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Faye, I also would like to state something here. We have received some calls stating that that there's a person, that the persons have been accepted for a position, and the person who is calling them creates an urgency to produce personal identifying information. The catch with this is that they seem to know more about the person than is on their resume or application, and the business hesitates when they're asked questions about the business that they're you know, the position that is available. So do you believe that this is a form of social engineering, and what would you suggest that the audience do?
Yeah, Rick, that's a great question. I mean, so the hypothetical you posed, it has all the classic red flags that where you should be to take a pause, think about it carefully, think about why, you know, why they're asking these questions, where they're getting this information from, why they would have it if you haven't given it to them. And so I would stop for a moment and think about how they got your information, where you found out about the job offer or the job posting, and proceed very carefully. But it does sound, from what you're talking about, like social engineering and an attempt to just collect your personal information so that maybe it would be used to steal your identity.
Thank you.
And so that goes to our fourth recommendation, and that's to do your research. If you're interested in a particular company, you should check it out. Do your research. You can check it out with your local consumer protection agency like Nevada Consumer Affairs or the Better Business Bureau or your state attorney general's office. And they can tell you whether they've gotten complaints about a particular work-at-home program. And then at least you'll have some information to make an informed decision. And regardless of what you find out, it's always to your benefit to take it slow, pause for a minute, especially if you're being pressured to make a decision really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Scammers will you know, they'll take advantage of, or they'll try to create a sense of urgency so that you don't have time to think things through. Next slide, please. I wanted to present a few ideas if you're not able to pay your bills on time. So first, it's always worth asking for extra time. The companies that you owe money to may be willing to work with you to set up a payment plan with more time to repay. They may have new policies in place right now to deal with issues relating to the pandemic. You can also look for a credit counselor. And the first thing to do there, we would recommend that you go to our website, ftc.gov/credit counselor, for tips on how to choose a counselor. And keep in mind that most reputable credit counselors are nonprofit, but also be aware that just because a company has nonprofit status doesn't guarantee that the services are free, affordable, or even legitimate. And in fact, some credit counseling organizations charge high fees, which they may hide. And others might urge their clients to pay money. They might call them, quote unquote, voluntary contributions, but this can cause you to go into even more debt. So do some research before you commit to anything. Next slide. And of course, if there's always the option of borrowing money from a credit union or a bank, or putting more debt on your credit card. Before you borrow, take a look at the costs. You should ask what is the annual percentage rate? What fees are there? And when is repayment due? And also importantly, what happens if you can't make the payments? Then with that information in hand, you can figure out what the best deal for you might be.
Okay.
The FTC has some, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question that people might be interested in. If you can't pay your bills, would you suggest individuals start an email string when attempting or making payment arrangements?
I think that's a terrific idea. You want to document the conversation you have with your creditor, especially if they're making accommodations for you, so that you can point back to it if for some reason the creditor didn't document it on their side. And this will help protect you, you know, from them not communicating well amongst themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. You know, you should keep notes on everything that you're doing in terms of dealing with your creditors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
Thank you.
So I also wanted to point out the FTC has more information about this that might be helpful. It's at our website, consumer.gov, under using credit. Next slide. So if you're looking for quick cash, you may think about turning to a payday lender. But before you do, you should know that payday loans can be incredibly expensive to pay back. Very few people are able to repay them in full when they're due. For most people, the loan ends up rolling over and you end up paying even more fees. And the same goes with car title loans. Only now you're guaranteeing the loan with your car. And if you can't pay back the loan, you could lose your car. So just like with the other types of loans that I talked about, you'll want to know what the loan's annual percentage rate is. For the payday loans and the car title loans, this information might be harder to find, but it's important to know because the interest rate can be as high as several 100%. So you may need to do a bit of digging to figure out what the real cost is of a payday loan or car title loan. And you should also find out this information if you're thinking about going to a business that's offering cash advances. These loans can wind up making things worse rather than better. So if you're considering one of these quick loans, be sure to consider all of the costs too. Next slide, please. The FTC has a lot of good educational videos on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is called FTC Videos, and the videos on this channel are really informative and they're short. I want to show you one now on car title loans and what to watch out for. Can you cue up the video, please? Is the video available to show?
Give us a few minutes,
Okay.
a minute or so, while the video is uploading.
Okay.
But while we're waiting, Faye, I'd like to state that here in Nevada, our Department of Business Industry, the Financial Institutions Division handles those type of complaints. And if they have any questions, any consumers out there have any questions, they can contact our Financial Institutions Division. And of course, they can contact Consumer Affairs as well, and we can guide them and give them some type of direction if needed. Okay. So we're getting the video uploaded, and I have a question for Faye. Do you have a specific division that handles these type of complaints, or do they contact the Federal Trade Commission?
Thanks for asking. So the best way to communicate your concerns to the FTC is through our website. We have a portal where you can submit complaints about a company or any kind of business practices that you might be worried about that you're seeing in the marketplace. So you can go to the FTC's website and look for submit a complaint. Or we also have a toll-free line that people can call in if you don't want to do it over the computer. And that's 877-FTC-HELP, H-E-L-P. And it's really actually is very helpful to us if you submit complaints, so we know where the trending problems are and in what parts of the country we're seeing them in. Sometimes, you know, it might look like a local problem, but it's actually something that's coming up in different parts of the country. And then it's really helpful to us as law enforcement to know where to put our resources in terms of enforcement. And in addition to that, other law enforcement at the local, state, federal, and international level can have access to these complaints as well. So, you know, if you're being scammed by a company that is operating overseas, it might not be something that one government agency can handle, but it might be something that a different agency or somebody in a different country can help take a look at and try to shut down. So thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. Yes, in Nevada here, Department of Business Industry, we have some divisions that handle different types of complaints. Say, for example, real estate. We do have a real estate division. We have mortgage lending. We have, as I mentioned, Financial Institutions Division. We have the Labor Commissioner office. We have, I believe we're about 12 divisions in the Department of Business Industry. So again, if anybody has any questions concerning any of our consumers, they can contact us and we can direct them to the correct agency if needed. Now, I believe we're ready for our video.
To make a budget to see if it would help him pay. Every month, Michael ran out of money just before payday. He had to skip paying some bills and pay some bills late. He hated that. So Michael decided to make a budget to see if it would help him pay his bills when they were due. He wrote on a budget worksheet how much money he made each month. Then Michael looked at what he spent last month. He used those expenses to write what he thought he would spend this month. His expenses were higher than his income, which he knew, but now he knew where his money went. He started cutting. He cut money for eating out, movie tickets, and other things he wanted, but couldn't afford all the time. That solved the problem, and even gave him $50 extra for the month. He put $10 back in his budget to rent movies, and he saved the rest. That month, Michael carefully followed his budget. If he spent more in one budget area, he cut from another. He had enough money to pay all his bills on time. Michael felt much better with a budget.
All right, can we go back to the PowerPoint now?
That was a great video.
So I just wanted, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to show everyone that that's an example of the type of videos that the FTC has. They're all on YouTube under the FTC's channel, which is FTC Videos. And we have them on a variety of topics, including budgeting, car title loans. If there's a certain type of financial product that you're interested in, we might have some guidance that you can view there or on our website that might give you a couple things to look out for. So now let's turn to rent. If you're having trouble paying your rent, you should know that many states and localities have temporarily halted evictions and utility shutoffs due to the coronavirus pandemic. And if you're not sure whether your state has those laws in place, you can check with your state attorney general's office, the local consumer protection agencies, or your local legal aid office. And you can also check out NOLO's list of emergency bans on evictions. NOLO is a company that publishes do-it-yourself legal publications, and they have a website that offers do-it-yourself legal guides. But before you rely on it, though, you should still check with your state attorney general's office to confirm that the information listed there for your state is accurate and up to date. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about mortgages. If you're having trouble paying your mortgage, that can be scary, but there are some protections in place for homeowners. So first, let's talk about federally backed mortgages. This includes loans backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the FHA, the VA, and USDA. We recommend starting by contacting your mortgage servicer immediately. Let them know your situation and ask them what options may be available for forbearance or hardship. If you have a federally backed mortgage, the CARES Act gives you some valuable protections. The CARES Act has stopped foreclosures for 60 days starting from March 18, 2020. The CARES Act also gives borrowers the right to 180 days of forbearance. Next slide, please. So for mortgages that are not federally backed, again, we recommend that you start with your mortgage servicer so you can explain your situation and ask what they can do for you. And like I said before, a lot of companies are adjusting their policies because of the pandemic. You're not the only one in this situation, so it is worth asking. Listen carefully to the options they present and ask questions about what is expected of you, not just now, but also at the end of whatever relief they can offer you. They may offer some types of forbearance that can be really helpful. Also, look into what your state can do to help. Some states have frozen foreclosures, so find your state government's website and look around for help for borrowers. And I just wanted to note, forbearance, if you're not familiar with the term, that's when your mortgage servicer, that's your lender or the company that sends your mortgage payments, mortgage statements and manages your loan, allows you to pause or reduce your payments for a limited amount of time. And you should know that forbearance does not erase what you owe. You'll still have to repay missed payments or reduced payments at some point. So if you're able to keep up with your payments, you should keep making them. And another thing you should know is that forbearance is complicated. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution because the options depend on a lot of different factors. And this might include the type of loan that you have and the owner investor requirements for your mortgage loan. And it might also depend on who the servicer is. And there are a couple key factors to consider with each type of forbearance. You'll want to pay close attention to how your servicer expects you to pay back any missed payments or reduced mortgage payments. And I just wanted to give you a couple examples to give you an idea of the type of relief a mortgage servicer might offer. There's something that falls into the general category of paused payments paid during the existing mortgage. So here your servicer might allow you to stop making payments for a period of time, say 6 months, but then you would need to pay everything back at one time when your payments are due again. So under this kind of plan, you might owe a big bill that comes due all at once. And you need to remember that even though you're being allowed to put a pause on your payments, interest is still accruing until you repay in full. So another type of relief that a mortgage servicer might offer is mortgage payment reduction option. So say your monthly mortgage payment is $1,000. An example of this plan is where the mortgage servicer allows you to reduce your $1,000 monthly mortgage payment by, say, half for 3 months. After the 3 months are over, you would have say a year to pay back the amount of that reduction. So there are a couple things to consider with that kind of plan. The amount of reduction would be spread out over 12 months, but it would be added back to your mortgage payment once the reduction is over. So, so during the time where you are repaying, your monthly mortgage would actually increase. You'd have to pay back the $1,000 a month that you were already owing, but you'd also have to pay back the amount that you were allowed to postpone. And again, interest on the reduced amounts would continue to accrue until you pay them. And I just wanted to give you one more example of what a forbearance option might look like. And that would be paused payment option, but paid back at the end of the mortgage. So an example of this is maybe the mortgage servicer allows you to pause payments for 1 year, and that amount is repaid either by adding it at the end of your mortgage loan or by having you take out a separate loan. Here, you might be allowed to extend the term of your loan for some amount of time to pay back the paused payments or take out the separate loan. And extending your loan would mean that the missed payments would be added at the end of your loan. And extending with a separate loan would mean that when your mortgage comes due, you would also have to pay the separate loan. So this is kind of like a balloon payment where you have a large payment due at the end of your loan. And like the other options, interest on the amounts you don't pay right now will continue to accrue. So either way, I mean, there are a lot of, it's very complicated, and there are a lot of factors that you need to consider. And you'll need to prepare yourself mentally to be persistent. As you can imagine, it might take a while to get a loan servicer on the phone right now. So the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development keeps the list of approved housing counseling agencies. These counselors can help explain your options, so find one in your state at the HUD's website. Or you can call Homeowner Preservation Foundation. Their telephone number is 888-999-995-HOPE. They're a nonprofit organization that partners with mortgage companies and local government to help people get loan modifications and avoid foreclosure. Next slide, please. Whatever kind of mortgage you have, know that scammers are following the headlines too. So you're likely to hear from them. They might be a third party that says they can help negotiate for you with your lender. They might promise that they can change your loan to reduce your monthly payment or take other steps to save your loan. Unfortunately, you need to be careful when when you're looking at companies like this. Some of them are not completely truthful, and they might be outright lying when they're selling their services. And one of the best ways to spot a scam is to remember you should never be asked to pay upfront for mortgage help. And in fact, federal law makes it illegal for a mortgage assistance company to collect fees upfront. You don't have to pay anybody for mortgage help until after they deliver the results that you want. So you shouldn't have to write a check or turn over any money to a company before they help you. And if they ask you to, that's the big red flag. And if you do get what you think is a good offer from one of these mortgage assistance companies, it can be worth your while to contact your mortgage servicer again directly to see if they can match or better the offer. Next slide, please. So let's turn now to car payments. If you're worried about making your next car payment, you're not alone. Here are a few things you can do. Try to negotiate with your lender as soon as possible. Some banks, credit unions, and auto financing companies are letting people delay payments or renegotiate their payment schedules. But if your lender agrees to any changes, make sure you get these changes in writing. And this goes to Rick's point earlier. Try to document the back and forth that you have. And I thought his suggestion of having that email chain is a really good idea. Find out what rights you have in your state. Check with your state attorney general's office or the local consumer protection agency. Nevada Consumer Affairs is a great point of contact. Each state has its own rules about how cars can be repossessed and what happens afterwards. If lenders break the rules, they might lose other rights against you, or they might have to pay you damages. See if you can refinance your loan. If a lower interest rate or longer loan could make your car payment doable, this might help. Depending on how much your car is worth and how much you owe on it, you could also look into selling your car or trading it in to get something cheaper before you miss the payment. Whatever you do, don't do nothing. This is important. If you miss payments, your lender could repossess your car, sometimes without warning. And you could also be charged a lot more in fees and ruin your credit. If your car gets repossessed, check with your state's laws to see what options you may have to buy it back, or at least get back any of the personal property that was left in your car. And also know that you might be still on the hook for any deficiency, which is the difference between what your car sells for and how much you still owe on it, plus any fees related to the repossession. In most states, your lender is allowed to sue you for the deficiency. An attorney can tell you whether you have grounds to contest a deficiency judgment. Next slide, please. Given the tough financial impact this pandemic is having on so many of us, we might be getting behind on other kinds of payments too. That means debt collectors might start calling. If you get calls, you might want to talk to the collector at least once, even if you don't think you owe the debt or you can't repay it right away. That way you can confirm whether it's actually your debt. Sometimes the debt collector has reached the wrong person or they have outdated information. If it is your debt, the collector can give you more information about it. You'll also want to be able to work out a payment plan with the collector. You may be able to work out a payment plan with the collector or reach an agreement to reduce the amount of the debt. You should know that debt collectors have rules that they have to follow. And if they don't, please tell us at the Federal Trade Commission. For example, debt collectors can't call you before 8 o'clock in the morning, and they can't call you after 9 o'clock at night. They can't use profanity or threaten violence or harass you to pay. They can't lie or pretend to be someone they're not. They can't pretend, for example, that they're a government official. They can't threaten you with arrest or deportation. And they can't tell anyone about your debt except for your spouse or your lawyer. And they can't call you at work if they know that your employer doesn't allow those calls.
Okay.
Next slide.
I have a question in regards to this. So would you suggest that the persons ask the debt collectors supposed debt collectors for a moment and ask if they can call them back so they can do some research and do some vetting on that debt collection company to see if it's actually their debt and who it is with?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Sometimes it's hard to tell because the debt can get sold and then resold. So the person who's calling you might not be the company that you originally owed the debt to, but it's still helpful to know who you're dealing with and to get as much information as possible. And it also has the added benefit of, again, putting a pause on things. There, you know, like it might feel like a high pressure call. But you can take a step back, and that's one way to do that. I think that's a great idea.
We get quite a few calls about debt collection from consumers, and they think that debt collector is a scam. And we always do ask them that they should ask this company to basically prove the debt that is owed. What are the regulations surrounding that? How are the just for clarification, how are the collectors supposed to be able to prove this debt? Is it in writing?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So yeah, there should be some kind of written documentation, and they should be able to provide that for you.
Mm-hmm.
You can request that in writing, correct? Just to have something something mailed to you in the form of a statement or what have you.
Yes, and I think that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good thing to do. Especially because, you know, there might be other people with your names, and you might owe some debts, but they might be calling you about somebody else's debt, and you don't need to get wrapped up in that. So that helps make sure everything is clear and straight, and that we're actually talking about the same thing.
Now, if they're not able to send you something in writing, is it your advice to not pay those debts to these companies that are calling and not able to provide any proof other than the phone call? They're just saying that you owe this debt.
You know, so for me, that's a tricky question. I think, you know, it's something to think about. I would do a little bit more research before I like just disregarded a debt collection effort. I would recommend going to the consumer protection websites, like the FTC's website on debt, and look for information on debt collection to see exactly what the advice is that closely matches your, you know, the debtor's particular situation. I think it's really fact specific. So I would be leery of giving kind of generalized advice on that.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
One thing we do see too is, or get calls about our supposed debt collection companies calling, saying that they're debt collectors and asking the persons to verify their street address, their phone number, which you can get easily. But then they go into, you know, you need to verify your social security number. You need to know, verify your full name. You need to verify your banking account information. That's all personal identifying information that persons can scam easily. In fact, I had a older person contact me and say that one individual contacted her from a debt collection company, verified her name and address, and then when she hung up with him, another individual called from the supposed same company and got the name and address, and then started asking her for her social and checking account information. Those are the type of calls that we encounter, you know, that people get every day.
I think those are red flags. Would you agree, Faye? They start asking you for your banking account number and social security number. I think those are red flags.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And, you know, they're calling you, they supposedly have information that supports the reason why they're calling you, saying that you owe them money. So they should have the information they need. And exactly. if they don't, then that's on them to figure it out. You don't have to help them out with that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, I wanted to talk about a few more things to know about debts and debt collection these days. If the loan that you're overdue and repaying on is a federal student loan, you should know that the Department of Education has told its private collectors to stop calling, stop sending letters, and stop sending billing statements to people who are in default. And this is in place through September 30th of this year. There's an automatic forbearance for student loan borrowers through September 30th. And the Department of Education has also temporarily set interest rates at 0%. If you want more information about this, you can go to studentaid.gov. More specifically, you can go there generally, and then for more specific information, you can go to that website and go to their announcements and events section, and they have a page specifically for issues relating to coronavirus. Some states are putting limits on what debt collectors can do to collect a debt right now. Some states are even limiting the kinds of debt they can collect. And you can find out more and the latest information by checking with your state's regulators. And if you're not sure who regulates debt collectors, start with your state attorney general's office. Next slide, please. If calls get to be too much, you can get them stopped. One note though, the calls might stop, but that doesn't mean the debt has disappeared. So to stop a collector from contacting you, you can send the debt collector a letter telling them to stop contacting you. We would recommend that you send it by certified mail with a return receipt. That gives you a record that the collector received your letter. If you want to avoid a trip to the post office during the pandemic and you prefer to just drop it in the mail, then at least keep a copy of the letter for your records and note down when you sent it. Either way, it's a good idea to keep a copy of the letter for your files. Now, once the collector gets you, go ahead.
There was a question from the viewers. When did the student loan forbearance start and the student loan interest rate drop to 0?
I think it was very recently. And for that information, I would suggest that you go to that studentaid.gov website. So it's the address that I have is https studentaid.gov/announcements-events/coronavirus. And the information is evolving, and so I think that's the best place to look for that information.
Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah. Once a debt collector has received your request to stop contacting you, then they're only allowed to contact you to confirm that it will stop contacting you, or to tell you that the creditor or the collector is going to take a specific action, like filing a lawsuit against you. But remember, stopping a debt collector from contacting you does not cancel the debt. You still might be sued or have the debt reported to a credit bureau. Next slide. So one way we can all help each other is by sharing the reliable and trustworthy resources when we find them. I hope you'll share these in your community. You can keep up to date about the latest scams by signing up for the FTC's consumer alerts. To do that, you can go to ftc.gov/subscribe. As Chris and I were discussing earlier, the FTC we would love to hear about the scams that you are seeing or the questionable claims you're seeing companies making if you see a problem out there in your community. As I mentioned before, your reports matter, not just to the FTC, but to all in law enforcement who have access to our system and to the people in your community. It helps every time you report a scam. Please, whenever you spot a suspicious claim or anything you think might be a scam, tell us at ftc.gov/complaint. And this is true even if you spotted the scam and were not taken in. It's still helpful to know what kind of issues are percolating. And here are 3 key resources that I wanted to share with you. To find out the latest about the pandemic, go to coronavirus.gov, which takes you straight to the CDC. To learn more about scams and how to avoid them, visit ftc.gov/coronavirus. And to find out what else is going on across the federal government, along with lots of resources from other federal agencies, go to usa.gov/coronavirus. Next slide, please. So we know that many people are out of work and hurting financially. In case it helps at all, we wanted to make sure you're aware of the FTC's website called consumer.gov. We created consumer.gov website in response to feedback from legal services providers who wanted more materials delivered in a direct, action-oriented way. This website is great for people who want the basics in easy-to-follow language. It has useful information about money management, including things like how to make a budget. And it also explains what credit is and how loans work. And that's it. I wanted to thank you all for participating and for your great questions and for your time today.
Faye, I see another question from one of our viewers, Lynn, and she's from the Reno area. She's asking if we will be sending, if we can send this presentation to the viewers.
That would be great, and that's fine with me.
Okay.
I appreciate your interest.
This is just a reminder, actually, we did have a call recently, and I think it's just good to talk about. There's a lot of obviously relief scams going on out there. People are trying to contact you offering some type of relief, and they're usually fishing for information and such. And I'm not particularly aware if this one was or was not, but I did advise the consumer to go to the source directly. But they were a bartender who was out of the job in a different state and heard of a business here in Las Vegas that I can find, but they were offering relief strictly for bartenders who were out of the job. And they said that the money was coming from alcohol companies such as like Jameson or Miller Lite. And I said, I don't know how you found this information, but the best thing to do would probably ask Miller Lite or Jameson if they're actually giving out money to bartenders. But, it's just good to be aware of the different types of, I'm figuring that there's probably all kinds of scams out there that are offering different types of relief and, targeting basically a specific, market of people.
That's a really interesting example. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like the breweries are providing that kind of relief, but I would also expect if Miller is providing that kind of relief, they would be publicizing it a lot. Yeah. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to double check directly from the source, because that's exactly the type of thing that a scammer would find opportunity in. Something kind of close, it kind of makes sense. And people who in that moment are vulnerable. Yeah, that's an interesting example.
Hey, Faye, there's another question from a viewer. They said, thank you. Could you please repeat the resources? One was studentaid.gov/announcement-events/coronavirus. And the others were, she's asking what the others were.
Okay, maybe I can put them in this Q&A. Let's see.
maybe Stephen, our tech, can produce that part of the PowerPoint. Was it in our PowerPoint, Faye?
Yeah. I listed several websites in the PowerPoint itself, and maybe that's answered by, like, circulating the PowerPoint. Then you would have all the links right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's one that you pointed out was USA.gov.
Right, that's one of them.
Right. Okay. So we're just getting questions, which is a good time to ask questions now for our viewers and consumers. I think we had quite a bit of our audience participating in this webinar, which is great. I do want to add that, if anyone needs to contact Consumer Affairs, we do have a online website and a complaint form if they need to file a complaint at www.consumeraffairs.nb.gov, or they can also call 702-486-2750. We also have a toll-free number. It is 844-594-7275. In case you're out of the 702 area code, they can call toll-free. Faye, I think this was a great informative PowerPoint. I really learned some new things about it. We do have more webinars to share with our consumers and viewers out there. I know I've seen quite a bit coming through my email, but they all have some great information, and I do try to attend some of them, and because they do offer great information, especially right now with this pandemic going on. A lot of scammers out there, fraudulent activities going on. But what I see, Faye, and I'm really happy to say that I'm seeing that a lot of consumers are really getting savvy out there. And I'm really, really happy to hear that from some of our consumers. But there's always someone out there that unfortunately they fall prey. And we're here to help. The FTC is here to help. Consumer Affairs, the Attorney General's office, our Department of Business Industry also has great resources that they can also contact. And so I just want to put that out there for the viewers and audience. We hope you found this to be informational. I know I did. Again, there's going to be more webinars. We'd like to have the IRS liaison participate in one of our webinars. That's to be more in the future, of course, maybe next week. And I have the Social Security Administration hopefully to participate as well, to offer their information. And if I understand correctly, the IRS extended the income tax preparations to July 15th, if I'm correct. If not, we can surely find out for the audience. And so I guess the deadline is usually April 15th, and I believe it was extended to July 15th, which is great for what's happening here during this time. If no one has any more questions, I don't see any more questions in our queue here.
Chris?
Yes.
I might, if I could add in,
Sure.
I think today with what each individual has learned, that they start a conversation with their family members, with their kids, their parents, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles, their friends. Start the conversation so you don't, or they don't end up in a situation where they have been deceived or been deceptive, somebody has taken advantage of them. Be proactive now, because if something happens, it may be too late. So start the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we did pretty good. our little 1 hour is about up, Faye. I want to thank you again in the Federal Trade Commission, Marcela Segura, and yourself and everyone in Los Angeles, California. And I hope we can do this again soon. And it looks like we had about 34, 40 people, participants that were joining us today. We thank you, the viewers, and your questions. And again, the PowerPoint will be distributed to the people that requested. Thank you again.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you, Chris, Rick,
you.
Shane.
You're welcome. Thank you.